One. What's up, everybody? The third installment of our fantasy videos, Targets by Round. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite fantasy players in a PPR format in the late rounds, that being rounds 10 through 15. If you want to check out the other Targets by Round, see our other videos for early round picks and middle round picks, which are equally as important as these late round picks here that we're about to discuss. As always, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying the content. Even more importantly, subscribe to the channel so you can keep getting this great content as well as other NFL content throughout the season, and comment what you think some of your favorite draft picks and your targets in this fantasy season. But that's it. Well, let's start with round 10 and let's talk about some picks here that we're intrigued by. I will start first with the Chargers' most recent first round pick with Ladd McConkey. McConkey, yeah. So I'm just gonna call him Lad. But regardless, you're getting a big absence at wide receiver as Keenan Allen is out of the picture now in LA, and you still have a great talent at quarterback with Justin Fields. I think a lot of people are gonna be looking to see, well, who's gonna get all that target share that left with Keenan Allen. I think Lad is a great candidate to be that wide receiver that feels Justin Herbert could really take your liking to right away. You see so many rookies, and let's talk about like just Puka Nacua last year, really quickly emerging as the number one, but even something less outlandish like that. You see rookie wide receivers so often step into a big role quickly. And I think Lad could be something like that that provides you a lot of benefit as a rookie wide receiver. That'll be, if not right away, the number one wide receiver for the Chargers. Any thoughts that you had on this guy? Was he on your radar, or is this something that you kind of look past? Because there are some other wide receivers like Josh Palmer on this Chargers team, but you get like Mike Williams is gone too. So this is going to be a new look passing offense and passing attack outside of Justin Herbert for the Chargers. I think that provides a great opportunity for a rookie wide receiver with the new head coach to really shake things up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the pick a lot. I think, like you said already, with Mike Williams, he's now on the Jets. And then you also have Keenan Allen now on the Bears. So there's going to be tons of opportunity in this offense. You do have Harbaugh coming in. So I'm curious to just see how that offense kind of runs under him rather than Staley. But nonetheless, you still have Herbert playing quarterback. You have one of the top quarterbacks or top 10 quarterbacks in the league throwing you the ball. You're going to have opportunities. And I mean, I know he's from Georgia. I don't know a ton about McConkey, but I know
Mhm.
he's really skilled, more of a slot type receiver. Just kind of needs to avoid the injury bug. But everything else I've heard about him is on the positive. So I think if he gets those opportunities, doesn't get hurt, he can easily surpass Josh Palmer as the number one receiver on this team. And yeah, I think it's a good pick. He's gonna get passes from Herbert all season, barring injury. So the opportunities are there, and I mean the risk is worth or the reward is worth the risk in the 10th round. I mean, this is where you take a little bit of a gamble, and you never know if he does emerge as that number one option with Herbert throwing behind center. That it's definitely going to be worth it in the 10th round.
I have to think so. And the one thing I'd say on the flip side for this pick and the kind of argument against it is that you get Jim Harbaugh as a head coach, and now you got Greg Roman as the new offensive coordinator out in LA. What you saw from a Harbaugh team in Michigan, really tight end heavy, obviously a lot of run game, but also utilizing tight ends in the pass game. Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator does something very similar. He was out, I think he was just, let me look at his actual history. But when Greg Roman, this is not the first time that he's been the coordinator on a Harbaugh coach team. When they were both on the 49ers together back in the early 2010s when they were making those deep playoff runs. And a big proponent of that offense was tight end heavy with Vernon Davis. So these two guys at the helm of the Chargers offense like to use tight ends a lot, and then we'll see how that plays into a factor in this offense. Regardless, it's not often you get a rookie wide receiver come up and have the immediate potential to be the go-to guy for as great as a quarterback as Justin Fields. Sorry, Justin Herbert. I keep doing that. And I think that presents a tremendous amount of opportunity in this 10th round here.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree.
I think I got one more pick I want to talk about here, and then I can let you get some guys here. But the one guy I want to talk about here in this 10th round is Jake Ferguson at tight end 9 I really like him is if you're not going to go up and pick a great tight end immediately, getting a guy like Sam Laporta or Kelsey, I think Jay Ferguson's a great late round tight end. This is a guy that already last season behind CeeDee Lamb, he saw some of the highest target share in this Cowboy offense. And I think he's really just starting to get his footing as a young tight end. Um, this is an offense that is about as pass heavy as they come. CeeDee Lamb, while great, and while he will continue to get um, his target share, um, is not going to interfere too much with Jay Ferguson simply because of the volume that this Cowboys offense has. Ferguson he's 25 years old. He's really started coming to his own. You could see in the last few seasons how much he stepped up, and now, as I think he's got again a really good footing. I think he's in a prime situation to really exceed this tight end 9 spot. And now I don't think again he's going to be a guy that's like Sam Laporta level because just of the way this Cowboys offense runs, it's not too heavily relied on with the tight end. That being said, you look at the targets and the receptions that Jay Ferguson had last year, and given what the new wide receiver room in Dallas looks like without a guy like Michael Gallup, it's really easy to see where the volume's going to come from for Jay Ferguson. I think that he's going to see a lot more volume than a lot of the tight ends that are projected higher than him at tight end 9. So I like this spot a lot for him. I will be taking Jay Ferguson in just about as many fantasy leagues as I can. I think he's in a great spot here. 6'5", big guy, but really athletic. Again, super pass heavy in Dallas. And then you're seeing guys like, Tony Pollard was in the running back situation for Dallas. They would get a lot of receptions. Those guys are gone now, and Zeke Elliott's now the number 1 back. That is not a pass catching back. So again, even more opportunity for volume share for Jay Ferguson here. Again, can't recommend enough personally.
Yeah, I mean he finished tight end number 9 last year already. Like you said, Gallup's gone. And they replaced him with Brandon Cooks, 30 years old now. I don't think he's gonna really stir or steal up that many target shares on this offense. So yeah, I like Ferguson to at least be as good as he was last year, finishing at number 9. I think he's really solid tight end, but like you said, I don't think he's gonna necessarily squeak into the top 3. Could be wrong, especially with the opportunity here, but at least talent-wise, I don't know if I've seen it yet, but certainly opportunity-wise, he's going to get many targets in this offense, being the number 2 option behind CeeDee Lamb. So yeah, I think it's still a really good pick, especially if you just want a solid tight end who you know is going to produce. You can't really go wrong with him.
Yeah, I think that's really fair enough. It's hard to put a guy like to say that a guy that finished tight end 9 last year is going to finish top 3. But if there was someone that I think legitimately has a shot being this far out in the late rounds, Jay Ferguson's the only guy at tight end that I could look to and say this guy has potential to be a top 3 player at his position. And so I think that provides, and like we talked about in the last videos, we're really looking for guys to have a lot of value in these late round picks, guys that could potentially drastically out kick their average draft position. I think Ferguson's a guy that could do that as well as Ladd on this page. Moving on from Jay Ferguson, anyone else on this that you wanted to call it that was on your radar, that you were
Yeah,
thinking about?
yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about opportunity. We are in the 10th round now, so I think if you really need a running back, not that I love either of them, but Brian Robinson Jr., Tyjae Spears, they're both RB1s. So if you're desperate for a running back, I don't think you could go wrong with either of them. I'm personally going to stay away from the Tennessee offense. I don't think they're going to be that great this year. D Hop's already battling injuries. Calvin Ridley now on the team didn't impress too much last year, returning from that gambling suspension. But I do think you might be able to get something out of Brian Robinson Jr. in Washington. He is RB1, and I think just getting Jaden Daniels on that offense is going to only benefit him. Teams are going to scheme a lot more for the pass, and his legs as well with the spies. So I think Brian Robinson Jr. might be worth it. I don't think he's a guy who's going to finish RB1 or in that range, but it could be a really solid flex. And just given the opportunities, I don't think it's too big of a risk taking here at round 10.
Yeah, I actually like that point a lot. I will say with Tajay Spears in Tennessee, they got Tony Pollard there too, so got some competition, at least waiting in the wings. We'll see what role Pollard fills. But for Brian Robinson, I love that. The Commanders got Eckler this year. who's coming off an ACL injury, but he's not going to be playing right away. And so at least at the very beginning, you're going to get like bell cow workload from Brian Robinson Jr. with this Commanders offense. And depending on the health of 100% depending on the health of Eckler, that could get extended to further and further in the season. And so again, looking for value here, you're not going to get many RB1s this late in the draft. You're not probably going to get any RB1s this late in the draft. So I think there's a ton of value there. And that's something that I hadn't considered, but I think it's a tremendous point. And something that I probably will look to employ because you can get a guy like that produces early. That just helps your fantasy season so much, obviously, getting off on the right start. And then I also am not 100% convinced that Eckler is going to come back anytime soon, given his injury history. And then again, given his injury history, I'm not convinced that he's going to stay healthy this year with his age and baggage that he's had. So I think a lot of opportunity there for Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, he already finished RB21 last year.
Yeah,
Granted, yes, Eckler's gonna take a lot of those shares in the pass game, but I think as far as running the ball, your guy's gonna be Brian Robinson, and I do think that team's gonna be at least a little bit better than they were last year. Can't really be worse.
yeah, it's hard to get worse. That's what I said about the Bears though, and they figured out a way to do that a couple of years in a row, get the first pick. But I agree. I think, especially with a guy like Jaden Daniels, you got a lot of upside of this offense, and you want to draft guys with upside in offense. That's how you get guys that exceed their ADP. It's by exceeding expectations. I think it helps that there's not a ton of expectations in Washington, but there's also a lot of potential with some young guys they got too. So exciting times to be an offensive skill player in Washington. All right, let's move to round 11. I think I only got one guy highlighted on my end here that I wanted to talk about, but we can certainly add a few more guys. And interesting enough, you can see Eckler here, who's actually, getting drafted behind Brian Robinson Jr. It's obvious that Eckler is more talented, but given his timeline and a lot of question marks around his health, you can see why he's falling so far in the draft at RB 33. And I don't have him highlighted, but now that we're on the topic of Eckler, that could be a guy that's provides value too. I know it kind of goes against the Brian Robinson pick, but if you don't get Brian Robinson, getting Eckler and stashing him on your bench could be a nice handcuff, depending on when he comes back and how his health progresses. He wouldn't be the first guy to come back from, a pretty tough injury and exceed. I don't see it very likely with him, but this guy's obviously coming off an RB1 season 2 years ago. And so he's still got something left in the tank, and it might be worth an 11th round pick at pick number 108 and snagging a great talent in Austin Eckler. But the guy I wanted to talk about specifically was Courtland Sutton here, who, in the last slide we talked about, you're not getting many RB1s this late in the draft. You're not getting any wide receiver ones this late in the draft outside of Courtland Sutton. And I think that just provides tremendous value. And it's very self-evident why. Now, the reason he's falling so far is RB or wide receiver 44, why he's the best in number one wide receiver on the Broncos is because the quarterback situation in Denver and also just his production in his career. I mean, he's a great talent. You've seen him make a ton of plays, but he just never had the support at quarterback to really let him shine as a fantasy production perspective. Last year he had 60 receptions for under 800 yards. He's only broken 800 yards once the last 3 seasons and never exceeded 70 receptions in that same 3-year span with the Broncos. But there's upside there because we don't know the quarterback situation with Denver right now. We don't really know what to expect out of Bo Nix at quarterback over there. And if he comes in as a rookie and shines and really takes a liking to Courtland Sutton, I think there's value here. Now, based on the production value that he's had, you should very much level set your expectations and know that there's, take it with a grain of salt, and there's always the upside, but who knows what's going to be achieved. But I have a hard time believing the wide receiver one for a Broncos team that's seemingly improving year over year will have too low of a floor at Courtland Sutton. You certainly look at some other wide receivers in this slide and others, and at least you have a little bit known production value for Courtland Sutton in knowing his skill level that he can produce. And it's hard to get worse quarterback talent than what he's played with the last 4 years. So I think what you've seen out of him the last 3 seasons is probably the baseline of what you're going to get from him. And then it could even exceed that. No, 10 touchdowns last year, from a receiver that only caught 60 passes. If he can get that volume and target share up a little bit, then I think it bodes pretty well for him getting him here at the 11th round.
Yeah, I mean, it's early in the preseason, but Bo Nix did look good in his first start. He is an older rookie too, so I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of people are expecting him to be a little bit more NFL ready. I mean, he spent at least 5 years in
it
college,
seemed like he's been around forever.
maybe even more. Yeah, but yeah, that Oregon offense was great. He had a lot of weapons to work with, but yeah, like you said, I think he can't really get worse than how Russell Wilson performed in Denver. So I do like the pick. Once again, yeah, you're going with opportunity. I mean, you grab a wide receiver one on the depth chart in round 11. It's hard to kind of go somewhere else and maybe grab like a Dunze who's supposed to be wide receiver three for the Bears. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's just yeah, so like yeah, I like it going with the just pure opportunity in that sense. Another guy like even one pick behind him though, Christian Watson. That that Packers wide receiver room is getting pretty full quick, and a lot
yeah.
of good young players. But when he was healthy for the Packers 2 years ago, he was very electric. 6'4", I believe he ran like a 4.4 in the combine. So just the prototypical wide receiver. He's been battling hamstring injuries, and apparently they found that his like I forget which one, but one of his hamstrings was like 60% stronger than the other. So he was working on that this offseason.
Just a
I
wild
think he
imbalance.
could,
I did hear that too.
yeah. So I think he could have a breakout. I mean, he looked really good when he was healthy, but he's one of those guys who you never know how many games he's going to really end up playing, especially in such a short career. You're almost expecting him to get hurt again because that's kind of been the case
Yeah,
in his first few seasons.
it's tough. Like you look at his stats and his output his first two seasons, and it hasn't been all that great and kind of been riddled by injury. But again, the theme of these videos has always been opportunity, and you're getting the wide receiver two behind Jaden Reed here out of a really good uh, Packers offense with Jordan Love. But there's a pretty stark difference between Jaden Reed and Christian Watson. Like you mentioned, Watson 6'4", and can really stretch the field. Where Jaden Reed can he's only 5'11", plays much more of the slot kind of hybrid wide receiver um, role in that offense. So there is opportunity for Christian Watson here if he's playing. The big question mark for him is can he stay healthy? And, it's yet to be seen, but it's probably worth the risk this late, given who he's got throwing him the ball and how electric he can be when he is actually on the field. And
Yeah, I mean, definitely more of a risky pick, but high upside. So if you're going for a player like that, you already have your wide receiver room set, but never know with an injury and never know with maybe a breakout guy. I think Christian Watson at least kind of fits that mold, but yeah, not as much as a sure thing as you're getting out of Cortland Sutton, like you said. You're kind of having a baseline of over or right around 800 yards at worst case scenario.
yeah, yeah, agreed.
But the other one, just before we jump,
Yep.
Brock Bowers.
Yeah, no, you've been
Brock
all over
Bowers at
him.
107. We've talked about him a lot in other videos, but I think if you take Brock Bowers, he already passed up Michael Mayer in the tight end depth chart.
Hmm.
Michael Mayer, also a previous first round pick, more of a hybrid tight end who also is really good in the run game. But I think you can't go wrong with Brock Bowers, second option behind Devontae. And if you're looking for a guy who kind of fits like how Sam Laporta was last year, I think you might get lucky on a guy like Brock Bowers and never know, you might get a top three finisher with him.
Yeah, you're definitely
Or
hunting
you might
the
get
Sam
somebody who
Laporta
doesn't
story
finish top
here.
half.
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely hunting the Sam Laporta prototype now. Like, hey, can a rookie tight end come in and be a top three, top one tight end in the league, and from a fantasy production standpoint? You're probably not going to go far to say that about Brock Bowers, but he's got the potential. Like, it's not often a tight end gets drafted in the 13th pick in the NFL draft. Like you said, he already surpassed and leapfrogged um, Mayer at tight end. So you got a lot of potential for him. You saw the production value that he had at Georgia. Now, can he go do that in a Raiders offense that's kind of struggled the last couple of years, but has great talent in terms of Devontae Adams at wide receiver? Where they start to run into trouble is when you look at the quarterback situation. Is it going to be Gardner Minshew, who's had some electric times in the past, but just hasn't put together a full great season? And kind of like somewhere in between a quarterback one and a quarterback two his whole career. And then you got Aiden O'Connell out of Purdue, who we saw as a rookie last year, struggled and had some growing pains. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders gave him the keys to the offense and let him run once the Gardner Minshew situation kind of pans out the way it has for other teams in his career. But I do like Brock Bowers. Again, I think this is one of the few picks we talked about where there's also some downside of this pick where like you could see one, this offense not really running all that well with these quarterbacks. You could see him, maybe splitting time with Michael Mayer, just given the fact that he's such a high pick. But if Brock Bowers can come in this league and establish himself as one of the more athletic and skilled tight ends, then the sky's the limit for this guy too. So I think it's a double-edged sword in this situation, just because it's not often you see a tight end get drafted this high and already have such competition with another first-round pick, right? A young first-round pick tight end right behind him in the depth chart. But this is a unique situation for tight ends and just a Raiders team in general.
All good points. I think exactly. Like, I would more so take him if you already kind of have your tight end position figured out, and that's your risk if you want to try and get somebody who could maybe lead your team and be that separating guy.
Yeah, or because depending on how many guys in your league, they're saying that he's the 12th tight end, so you probably everyone in their league probably has their tight end already. Brock Bowers, good backup there. Or if you're getting really aggressive, or in a deeper league with more people, then maybe he is your first tight end off the board, and then you're really rolling the dice with a rookie there, which is definitely played out before. But I also have seen that tight end is one position where like guys take a couple years to really get and develop and come to fruition.
Yeah.
Now Laporta was an anomaly, and again, we're searching for that Laporta anomaly here, but it's definitely not the prototypical case for tight ends. You look at guys like George Kittle and even like Travis Kelce, it took him a couple years to really become anointed within this league and become a dominant presence. And I think it's more likely than not that you see that with tight ends. And that's part of the reason I like Jake Ferguson, going back to the last slide, is, you gave him a couple of years to really become integrated within the league. And now it's, I think, what will be his breakout season. So again, the rookie tight ends do produce, but it's far less common than I think like a running back or a wide receiver, where it's a little bit shakier, in my opinion, this pick than some of the other ones that we've talked about too.
Yeah, no. I mean, you make a good point about Ferguson, and tight ends typically taking about 3 years till they've reached their potential.
But like you saw Laporta last year. It can be done. It's just not the easiest all the time.
That's your risk.
So here we go. Round 12 now. Running back that I really like this late is Chase Brown. You saw Joe Mixon depart from Cincinnati this last season, and now it's kind of up in the air between Zach Moss and Chase Brown. And what a lot of reports coming out of camp are saying is that I think he's in his second year now, maybe third. I'll have to check back in on that.
I think second.
Second year running back Chase Brown out of Illinois, really turning heads and giving Zach Moss a run for his money for that RB1 designation. I will not be surprised at all. And I almost can guarantee that as the season progresses, that you will see Chase Brown get more and more of a target share and steal that from Zach Moss. He was a pretty good complimentary back just as a rookie with Joe Mixon and had some great runs. And I think now that this running back room's a little bit open, he can really start to establish himself as a premier back if given the opportunity. Now, is he going to get that right away? It doesn't seem like it based on that acquisition of Zach Moss. But he has the opportunity to show what he's made of and really make a name for himself in Cincinnati and across the league, really, and exceed this RB35 ADP. Now, is he going to be a top 10 running back? Very unlikely, but top 20, I think, is possible if he can get that volume. That's the big key. But again, you're not getting a ton of guys with RB1 designations this late in the round in the drafts. But I think you got a chance here for Chase Brown to establish himself as the true RB1 this season in Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree too. I don't think I'm too worried about Zach Moss holding this job for the entire season. He is RB1 right now, but he's just a more experienced running back.
Zach Moss is
Yeah, we
good,
saw.
no doubt about it, but just, it's not the upside from not just a fantasy perspective, but from a personnel perspective in Cincinnati. The upside's not really there with Zach Moss. You know what you're going to get from him. Whereas I forget what round Chase Brown was drafted in, but they took this guy because they know he has potential. And I think if they start to give him the opportunity, you start to let that potential really develop.
Yeah, I mean, he was a workhorse for Illinois. That was like our
Oh yeah.
best season we've had in a decade, with him leading the way and leading that offense. So, I mean, he's shown he could lead an offense. Granted, that was Big Ten level, but yeah, definitely no slouch of a conference.
No, without a doubt. So I'm intrigued to
Yeah,
see what he can do. I'm honestly, as an Atlanta fan, I'm hoping that he can get those reps in that volume. I don't think it's going to come right away, but I think even last year, as the season progressed, you started to see him get a little bit better in terms of just his runs and making some better plays. I think he's got the opportunity to do so again. I'm not sure how big of a receiving threat Zach Brown or Zach Moss is. I think Chase Brown can open himself an opportunity within the offense in that regard as well, as I don't think that Zach Moss really is too big of a threat out of the backfield catching the ball. And I think that's, again, a spot where Chase Brown can differentiate himself and get more time in the field in this Bengals backfield.
yeah, yeah. I think Jonathan Brooks here too. Rookie, he's in a similar spot. He's
Yeah.
RB2 behind Chubba Hubbard. I think he can steal that job, but I would almost lean with Chase Brown, knowing that Cincinnati offense, at least if Joe Burrow's on the field, is going to be more productive. So
Hmm.
I do like the choice going with Chase Brown over Brooks here, even in
That's a
this
good point with
multi-round
Brooks,
league.
though. You do get, like, again, you're fishing for someone to break out and step up and figure it out, and that's potential. You look at the guys in the running backs last year that really exceeded their ADP. It's guys that were in uncertain running back backfields that they really took advantage of the situation. And that's what I'm looking for with guys in this late round. Uncertainty that allows them to be drafted in the 12th round, like you're seeing here, and then really stepping up. Like, even, we're talking about Jonathan Brooks, but last year, Chubba Hubbard, he was the running back 62 in most PPR drafts on average, and he finished RB 27. So it's not like Chubba Hubbard is quote unquote winning you your season, but to outkick your ADP like that, like, that's the opportunity that we're looking for in these late rounds, and that comes from an uncertain running back backfield and locker room where he's able to really shine. Like Jalen Warren last year is between splitting between him and Najee Harris. He really stepped up. You got guys like Kyren Williams. Again, at the start of the year last year, Kyren Williams was the backup, a young backup, and everyone was talking about
Yeah.
Cam Akers being the guy. And then Kyren Williams gets the opportunity to become one of the best running backs in fantasy. So it's not like these guys are guaranteed to do this or even should do this, but they have the opportunity coming from a mixed backfield to really outshine expectations. And that's what I'm looking for here. Again, Rashad White, Raheem Mostert, these guys, everyone was wondering what the production would be at all from these guys, given the competition they had in the backfield. And they finished at running back 5 and 4, respectively. So opportunity here with both the running backs. Like, if you can't get Chase Brown in this round 12, I think Jonathan Brooks is a great opportunity there. So I'm glad you brought up that point. Do I have anyone else here? Jameson Williams here intrigues me at wide receiver 50. Um, you know, Coming out of college with that ACL tear, you didn't get to see a ton from him. A lot of mouths to feed in Detroit too, with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. I'm just more intrigued of what's going to happen with this guy this year because they, took him pretty high in the draft. He didn't get a ton of usage last year. I'm just intrigued to see what a fully healthy integrated in the Lions offense Jameson Williams does this year. I don't have too strong an opinion on him. I think there's the potential at the 120 pick to get a guy that could really shine as a wide receiver too in a super high volume Detroit offense that's going to put up a ton of points this year. I think you got some potential here. It's going to be hard to take away a lot of the targets that Brown and Laporta are getting, but I think there's a chance that he can emerge as a pretty valuable asset on a fantasy roster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love like his production up until this point. Yeah, he's had
No.
the injury, got suspended for gambling as well for a few
Yeah.
games. But yeah, he was a first round pick a couple years back, and they still had the confidence to take him, even knowing he was gonna be rehabbing with that torn ACL. So I mean, the potential's there. It's just he hasn't even really sniffed it yet. I mean, never hoping for an injury, but you never know if Amon Ra goes down, maybe he breaks out. And like you said,
Yeah.
this offense is gonna be high powered. almost regardless of one way or another. They have great O line, so I
At this
think it's
point,
worth a
yeah.
risk if you can take it.
Are you telling me? Yeah, exactly. At this point, the reward completely outshines the risk in round 12. You know that Jacoby Myers just you know what you're gonna get out of him, which is good. He's a solid receiver that is the number two in that Raiders offense. But you know, especially given his quarterback play, really what you're gonna get out of him. And very rarely is that going to be a starter in your lineup. But Jameson Williams has the potential to emerge as a guy that you could be an everyday starter. Now, is it likely? Again, no, but at least you have that potential. You see a lot of great wide receiver duos in the NFL where the number two guy is still a very respectable fantasy option. My favorite being Jalen Waddle out there in Miami. James Williams, a young guy, give him a chance in a first round pick, give him a chance to emerge as that kind of talent there. Going on around 13, talking about Cole Kmet, I think a lot of guys are really high in him. Just maybe it's just the talk of again Chicago, but I think it's gonna be really tough for him to do a lot better than what he did last year, just given his red zone production last season. He did great and got a lot of touchdowns compared to his average at least. And I think it's gonna be hard to replicate given now that you got two new guys in Chicago that are gonna be fighting for red zone and just general targets with Rome at rookie wide receiver, and then Keenan Allen, of course, too. So I think there's he's a great actual tight end, but from a fantasy perspective, I'm not a huge fan of Cole Kmet, given how many miles there are now to feed in Chicago. Before it was, it's going to be a screen pass to DJ Moore or like a drop off to Kmet. Now offense is much more dynamic and a lot more guys on the field that can get that ball. So I'm avoiding Cole Kmet a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, even the running game or just the backfield's a little improved as well.
Yeah, with Swift.
Saw DeAndre Swift, yeah, take off on that short pass, in their last game in the preseason. But I mean, that's another guy who's going to take up a couple targets here and there from game to game. So I do agree with that point on Komet. Just looking at the player right above him, Gus Edwards. We already
Yep.
talked about Harbaugh, Greg Roman. Typically liking to run the ball a lot. We saw it at Michigan too. But I mean, Gus Edwards, he hasn't been a fantastic running back, but he is RB1 for the LA Chargers going into this season. So I think he's another guy that you might want to take. I mean, just pure volume wise, if they could get some first downs and move the chains, I think could be a workhorse type guy. They took Alt in the draft. Maybe it's not this year, but they do want to run the ball and they do want to establish that run game. So I think
Completely
that's another
agree.
guy you probably take a risk on here.
Given the MO of Greg Roman and Harbaugh, I completely agree with that point. I think that's again, not the biggest, tallest ceiling for a guy like that, but could definitely give you startable production value there in the 13th round. Staying on the theme of running backs and young running backs at that, I want to talk about Trey Benson in Arizona, rookie out of the third round out of Florida State, it looks like. Going on a team that's going to be on offense a lot, given how poorly the defense that the Arizona Cardinals have. This isn't a guy I completely love, given that James Conner has done pretty well last year in that Arizona offense, but Trey Benson gives himself an opportunity to get a decent share of that target if one or two things happen. One, James Conner does not continue that production value that he's had in Arizona, or two, we've seen him have a little bit of injury history. If he does go down, Trey Benson can take the reins and really thrive in a pretty pass heavy, given how much they're down Arizona offense, and that could really provide some PPR value for Trey Benson here. The one fear I have is that James Conner has been so effective out of the backfield receiving the ball that it's a little difficult for me to see Trey Benson emerging right away. But I think that's the guy. This is a rookie that you could stash on your bench and wait to develop into a justifiable fantasy starter if the opportunity presents itself to him.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that offense is better. They added Marvin Harrison
Yeah,
and just hopefully getting Kyler healthy from the start of the season should benefit him. Yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean I do think he will end up passing up Connor, and just seeing the way James Conner performed for them despite losing a lot of games, I think that is a little bit optimistic, or
agreed.
gives you reason to be optimistic about him if he does end up taking that
And
role over Connor. But yeah, I mean we are talking round 14, so you are gonna have to try to find some diamonds in the rough
That's
this
what I'm
season.
saying. We're
So,
talking about the second to last round of the draft here. Like, are we going to find someone that's going to be an immediate fantasy impact? Probably not, because they would be going earlier rounds. But this is a guy that at least, could provide some value down the road. And I think the same way goes with Zach Charbonnet. Although I really do like Kenneth Walker. Like, if he does go down, like it's a really good thing these late rounds to get a running back handcuffed, given their injury history. Much more so than a guy like Brandon Cooks in Dallas, who I do think has got some potential, just given the opening there. Um, but again, he's not doing anything that we don't expect. There's no long tail result from him. Anyone else you want to talk about on this board before I go on to the last round?
or I think this is our last round. Fantasy usually only 14 rounds,
Oh, you're right.
or depending
Yeah.
on the league.
No, you're totally right. Um, Good point. I guess while we're here, then we got a few minutes left. I kind of like Rashid Shaheed as the number two wide receiver in New Orleans. I think I talked in the first video about how I like Chris Olave there. I just like how great he is, but I think Shaheed's performance will really rely on the quarterback performance of Derek Carr out there in New Orleans. But you've seen some big play potential for him the last few seasons from Shaheed. And so if this offense can take a step in the right direction, you're getting a guy that's the wide receiver two for the Saints. Again, not a ton of, you're looking at like a Mike Williams Jr., Romeo Doubs. These are wide receiver threes. So you're getting guys that are in Shaheed that is a little bit higher on just on the depth chart in their offense. If Derek Carr can figure this out here in New Orleans, then I think you get some opportunity for him to be a viable fantasy guy. I think Shaheed's given his big play potential and less just sheer reception volume. Probably better in standard leagues than PPR, but I still like his value there in the last round here.
Yeah, I would even throw in Mike Williams. I mean, hopefully we get a healthy season out of Aaron Rodgers, and
Hmm.
whenever he is healthy and having one of those MVP type seasons, I mean, he usually has at least three receivers who you could start in your lineup week to week, fantasy wise. We know Garrett Wilson's
Yeah.
going to be leading the way, but having a big bodied target, especially in the end zone, I think Conklin is fine at tight end, but like Mike Williams could even steal some of those targets in the end zone.
Yeah,
So
especially
I
in the red
think,
zone. He's going to be a big threat. Rodgers knows how to find the big guy when he gets down to the red zone.
yeah, I think he's on a similar boat. I mean, I think you do get get a little bit better quarterback play. I'm not too optimistic on Carr, but I mean, who knows? Maybe Spencer Rattler takes over and
That'd be
ends up
interesting.
being
Yeah.
a solid quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. Totally agree. All right, well, that seems like that wraps up our late round stuff. Hope everyone enjoyed. We'll keep putting some more content out there, but definitely take a look at our early round and middle round fantasy targets as well. I think there's a lot of value there from a viewer perspective heading up into your fantasy draft. I'm trying to find how to stop recording. So